Hi, everyone. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with a special update, including a real American hero, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. And those of you who don't know, Flynn has spent decades serving our country, obviously in the military, most recently in the military, head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And then he helped President Trump get reelected, or excuse me, get elected. We'll see about reelected later. And for that sin and others, he was targeted by the Obama gang with unprecedented spying and corrupt prosecutions that ultimately resulted in a pardon by the president uh, to finally get some justice because he was unable to get it not only from the courts but from the Justice Department as well. So we're just so pleased. I was so pleased for you when you got the pardon, General Flynn. I know the best scenario would have been you being exonerated by the courts, as the courts were supposed to do, but Judge Sullivan uh, took a corrupt approach to handling your case. I mean,
Tom, the best would have been never having had the seditious and treasonous acts that were perpetrated against our country by the previous administration, and none of this would have ever happened had they not taken those steps. So, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. My case would have never have occurred had we not had the previous administration essentially spying on a political campaign for purposes of damaging the campaign, and then usurping the transition and the new president. I mean, no uncertain terms. We have to be very clear about that.
back during the campaign and the early part of the administration, did you have an inkling that they were doing what they were doing? Did you think that they were either capable of it and or pursuing this during the campaign and in the beginning of the administration?
Well, so before I answer that, I just want to tell you and any of the folks that watch Judicial Watch that I sincerely, wholeheartedly appreciate what Judicial Watch does for the United States of America. I mean, not only from the perspective of how you stood strong with observing and reporting on my particular case, but also what you do for others out there across the country as you take on actions. And so for anybody that listens to this and can share this, that the pennies, the dollars, and also the large donations that are provided to Judicial Watch, because I know that's how you live and breathe, are absolutely critical to fight against the tyranny that exists inside of our government. And so I'll make that sort of paid political announcement for you without you having asked me to do that. I do that because I believe in what your cause is and what your mission is. As far as the question goes, I think that I always had a feeling of or a sense of the undercutting by people in our intelligence community and in our law enforcement community, particularly the Department of Justice, some inside of our military, but certainly the intel community and the law enforcement community, the undercutting of what they were involved in and how the actions that they were taking, because it was always a sense of, you always had a sense of when they were around you, particularly as we transitioned, which was the transition into our government. It was like hand-to-hand combat. I mean, I felt like it was a hostile takeover of our country from a hostile force, and that means the hostility that was presented to us by the previous administration in order to be able to do the things that we need to do. And as a military guy, you give up command to somebody and you want to leave it in better shape than you got it, and you want to tell them all the warts that you still have, that you still believe are there. But now we're talking about the country. We're talking about the United States of America. So did I know? Did I feel? I would say that I certainly sensed it. I certainly felt it. during the campaign, for sure, definitely during the transition. And then as we got into certainly the early days of the administration, I had that feeling that we were still fighting against people inside the government that just couldn't fathom Donald Trump being the president of the United States. And I have great examples of that. I mean, executive orders after the inauguration, draft executive orders that were sent out for review to the various departments that would have to deal with those executive orders. I mean, they would come back with just scathing remarks about what Donald Trump was about to do, and you're sending them over there not for not for necessarily just crossing T's and dotting I's. You're sending them over there for legitimate debate and argument, and to make sure that we are following sort of the right path from where America has been or where America needs to go. But we're talking about hateful kinds of remarks from the Department of State, the Department of Defense, the Department of Culture, of Commerce. So, that's the kind of stuff that we dealt with in the first couple of weeks. And then, of course, we'll probably talk about my departure, but somewhat. But it's fascinating because, Tom, we're still dealing with the same problem. We're still dealing with the same people.
Yeah, I've noticed over the years, I call it almost this casual sedition every day in the White House, outside the White House. They don't believe the president should be able to be president. So that means he can't do what presidents ordinarily do, hire and fire directors of the FBI.
Well, that's why you're so good at what you do, Tom, because you're able to describe things in a very soft way, smart way that actually is attractive to the people that you support and that people that believe in Judicial Watch. But there's nothing casual about sedition.
Well, that's true, but we should recognize that the sedition was done in a way that it's the way other people breathe. We had sedition taking place among the bureaucrats and, frankly, some of the appointees of President Trump, who thought their job was to police him rather than implement his lawful directions. So, you're in your job, practically speaking, a minute and a half as National Security Advisor. I'm sure you've got a fire hose of issues, of information you're having to contend with. And essentially the FBI comes knocking at your door. And the next thing you know, you're out. Mm-hmm. I knew from the beginning that you were targeted, and practically speaking, Judicial Watch was alone in defending you there. Yeah. When did you recognize that? Was it before or after Sidney came on as your lawyer? Did you recognize, my gosh, the corruption here? I'm a victim in a way that I've never seen before in American history.
It was before. It was definitely before, and I knew it. I felt it again. Back to the last discussion, I felt it. I mean, from the time that the president talked to me about his conversation with Obama after he won, and we had a conversation about that.
So the news was that Obama told President Trump, watch out for General Flynn. He
said, don't hire him. Don't hire him. So, and to bring things to specifically your question about, sort of this monumental decision to shift my legal battle, my legal sword and shield, if you will, that was well before. And I just sort of had that innate feeling because I'm watching all of this evidence being exposed and all this information being exposed. And the one thing that I do know, I know very well because I'm trained in it, and that's the world of intelligence and electronic warfare and signals intelligence, and to a degree even the world of cyber, let's just say, but really what our adversaries are capable of doing. And you've talked about this a little bit, and when we talk about Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails or whatever, right? We kid ourselves to think that our adversaries aren't as good or better than we are in many regards. So when we say that these don't exist or that doesn't exist. I would bet my life on it that they exist. In fact, I would say that our adversaries in many cases are better than us in spying on us because they don't have the moral authority that we have to respect. They have no moral authority. They don't care if they get caught or not. So the knowledge of our adversaries is very clear, and they know much more than we give them credit for. That's number one. Number two, Tom, is basically the issue that you're raising. We had trickling, this trickling of exposure by elements in the FBI, by elements in the Department of Justice, of evidence that kept coming out. And when you see one little iota of some evidence, and let's just use the text messaging, right? Then you know that there is an abundance of other information that's there that is not being exposed. And you're saying to yourself, okay, if that exists, why, what else exists? And you know that there's much, much more to that. And let me put it into really specific examples. So here we have the head within the FBI, the head of espionage and counterespionage, as well as the deputy head of counterintelligence in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the head, of counterespionage and the deputy head of counterintelligence, which is supposed to counter our enemy's efforts to collect intelligence and gather and spy on us. And yet here he is sleeping with the senior legal advisor to the deputy director of the FBI. So not just some woman, she's the senior legal advisor and essentially an agent of the FBI who is advising the deputy director at the time. And the two of them are sleeping together and they're texting each other on what otherwise would be easily to collect on devices. And they're texting about all of their nonsense as well as what they are up to. So they're giving away, talk about, sources and methods, which is all, and I'm going to use a little bit of Irish in this conversation because I need to, instead of, all this bullshit that they talk about, like it's, this is only about a relationship. These people are giving away the sources and methods and the intentions, and they're warning our adversaries about what it is that's going on in our country. And this is not some Joe down at a GS7 or a GS9 level. This is the guy who is responsible for counter-espionage in our country, in our senior law enforcement organization, and he is the deputy for counterintelligence. The only person that's higher than him in terms of counterintelligence is not Bill Priestap, which is another name that everybody has become familiar with. It's actually the head of the CIA. Okay, many people don't understand the structure of our counterintelligence effort, and they think it's underneath the DNI. It's actually not. It's underneath the director of Central Intelligence or the director of the CIA. So that's where we know you don't run these kinds of things without that level of complicity or knowledge.
Well, and the idea that you would have a lawyer and Strzok, I don't know if Strzok was a lawyer, I think he is, but it doesn't really matter. But the legal, Lisa Page was acting as a lawyer for the FBI, a lawyer for the American people.
Right.
And she has this illicit relationship, to put it charitably, with Peter Strzok. So everything they've worked on together during that relationship and thereafter had been compromised.
Everything.
Ethically and legally compromised. So forget about their biases against you or against President Trump or Hillary Clinton. They ruined every investigation they touched because Lisa Page had something else in her mind when she was approving and advocating on issues related to Peter Strzok and communicating with him, and vice versa. So this is an awfully, and the FBI, beyond the abuse, the fact that these two think they could behave such a way and really get away with it. And in fact, they did get away with it because they weren't punished in any way that any other person would have been punished. I guess Strzok ultimately was fired. But so what a nightmare.
So let me tell you one other, because
of course you're the victim. You're the crime victim.
So so I'm one of the victims. Really, the American people are the victims. I mean, I tell people, Tom, don't feel sorry for Mike Flynn. I don't feel sorry for myself one bit. I know what I feel, and I know who I am. We need to feel sorry that our country was abused by this incredible talk about compromise. So on the battlefield or in the counterintelligence world, when you find that you have a compromise of intelligence, whether it's a leak of intelligence from an electronic system, or whether you actually have someone who you catch spying, but you don't necessarily let them know right away, you do what's called a vulnerability assessment in the world of counterintelligence. And that vulnerability assessment, as far as I can tell, has never been done. It has still yet to be done. And the vulnerability assessment, what it does is it looks into everything that you just talked about. So it looks into every single case. It looks into who are these people dealing with? Because at the end of the day, one of the things that we have to understand is, were these people, either of them or other people that they were dealing with on a daily basis, are they working directly for a foreign adversary? You know, when like old Jim Clapper,
wittingly or unwittingly.
Right. Well, that's Jim Clapper's favorite phrase, wittingly or unwittingly. You know, I mean, Jim Clapper uses that kind of a phrase, and it's so we have to still do this. We have to check this out, because if we have a compromise inside of our government at the highest levels to include potentially someone who has direct access to the president of the United States and is sharing information with our adversaries and allowing them insight into everything that's being discussed in terms of intentions, capabilities, ideas, policies, that's super dangerous. I mean, it is really dangerous. Now, you know, you can think that, well, that's all this James Bond crap. No, it's not. This is real. This is the reality of dealing in a world where spying is very, very real, and compromising people is very real. I mean, hey, let's face it. Swalwell over on the Intelligence Committee, we're just scratching the surface. We're scratching the surface with, you know, who else? And frankly, it's like, you know, my great lawyer, Sidney Powell, says, doesn't matter where the truth takes us. You're Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch, you don't care. You don't care who you go after, as long as it's the truth.
That's right.
Right?
We get documents, and we know the impact may not be favorable to people that we like.
Right. I mean, you've told me that. You told me that to my face. You said if it was you, Flynn, we would go after you. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a massive compromise of our national security system at the highest levels of our country. And it likely started, in fact, it didn't likely, it started under the previous administration. And maybe there was advantage taken, but you know, by adversaries to get inside of our system in a way that is very dangerous to who we are as a republic. And I say maybe. I mean, I just know how they operate, Tom. I know how they operate.
Well, you know, one of the things that occurred to me is, I should say, you may not know this, is that the State Department under Kerry, the one of the key guy under Kerry who helped write the dossier, or aspects of the dossier. People think it was just one dossier. No, they had many authors, including State Department officials under the Obama administration.
Mm-hmm.
He called the Russian embassy, catch this, a month before the election, to talk to who? The political officer. And the document was given to us because it related to the dossier and to Russiagate. So he is talking to someone in the Russian embassy, obviously their spy, their chief spy,
sure,
about Russia and Trump. And it's this State Department that withheld the information. And that's my segue into what Sidney was able to do for you. Because people think, the Justice Department fessed up, they did that. None of what has come out, either by the Barr Justice Department or the FBI, would have come out but for the insistence of your lawyer. None of this was voluntary.
Right.
And it was only because she was riding herd on him that any of this happened. So I don't give credit to the Justice Department. I don't give credit to Attorney General Barr or former Attorney General Barr for doing any of this. They should have known from the get-go there was something up with this, and yet they ignored it until they couldn't because of your lawyer.
Before I address what you're talking about, which is we should not give any credit to the Justice Department for what the outcome of what happened to me. But think about this for a moment, that had I not departed the White House in the way that I departed, had I stayed on as the National Security Advisor, the Mueller investigation would never have happened. Okay? So for your audience, and I don't know if I've said this to anybody else, I may have, but the Mueller investigation would never have occurred had I not departed the White House. Why? Because there were issues and responsibilities that only the National Security Advisor has to the President of the United States. And we would have never gotten to the place where we needed a special counsel to look into Russiagate, because we would have disproven. In fact, it would have been hugely challenging for anybody to come in, for the Department of Justice to come in and say, we need to have a special counsel for Russiagate, because frankly, you're looking at the person, and Sidney actually discovered this through exculpatory evidence. You're looking at the insurance policy. It wasn't all these other characters, and God love them for all of them for having been abused by our government. But so we're talking about something that is historical in nature, that happened to our country, that would likely have not happened. So
you were in a position as National Security Advisor, you would have been analyzing the intelligence from across the agencies. You, for instance, would have seen immediately that the CIA had referred to the FBI an inquiry into Hillary Clinton lying about Russia in order to distract from her emails, which we all knew to be the case, but they also knew that the Russians knew it to be the case.
Well, and to include the Steele dossier, right? The piece of toilet paper that thing was written on, and others. I mean, so all of these things that we have now learned were easily exposable early on in the administration. The president, and I don't, like somebody says, well, why, I mean, I could be mean-spirited to him and vindictive to him for saying, hey, I need your resignation, when he did. I don't feel that way at all. I don't feel that way at all, because he did not know what was happening. He really did not know what was happening. And the blame, if there's blame, and again, I'm not a vindictive person, but there is a place to say this is where it began, and it began under the previous administration at the highest levels of our government. And we're still facing this problem. So to fast forward to your question, what Sidney Powell fought for and waged a war over was what she knew to be true, and frankly, from her own experiences working in the federal government, and also in the area of appeals, because she's a real master at appeals, more than I think fighting in the defense or lawsuits and stuff. She's really a master at that. She knew, because she had studied it, and she saw it. She saw how the Department of Justice is incentivized for prosecutions and not actually discovering the truth. So they're going to lie, cheat, steal, deceive the American public in order to get their little promotions in government. That's just how it works. It's how the government, and certainly the Justice Department, works. It's incentivized for the wrong reasons, and that includes elements within the U.S. intelligence community. So she fought for that information that she knew existed, especially with what already was out in the public. Because if you had a little bit of something, if you had one thread, keep pulling the thread, because there's an unraveling there of information and evidence that is going to be explosive. And all these people that go, well, we don't want to hurt the government. We don't want to upset things. We'll let these people die on the vine out there. These people like Mike Flynn die on the vine out there, because we don't really want to hurt our institutions. Hell with that. The institutions have forgotten who they work for, Tom. And that's, again, I will keep plugging you guys, because you fight for we the people, and you don't fight for the institutions. And I think that I applaud your organization for doing that, because it is about our constitutional rights. My constitutional rights were severely, gravely violated. And for people that go, well, you lied, you lied, and you took this plea. Well, yeah. I mean, I will tell you, if you were in my shoes at that time, you'll know exactly how I felt.
Right.
You'll know
Well,
exactly how I
do have
felt.
to comment on this. You didn't lie. I mean, the facts
Right.
show you did not lie.
Right.
And so that's not your position. It's not your legal position. And pleading guilty and taking back the guilty plea is not unusual.
Right.
But of course, it's a different rule for people associated with President Trump. Why did I notice if there is to be a Biden administration, I call it now. Forget about the deep state. I call it the intel state. They're back. They would be back under a Biden administration based on the picks he has. And it goes back to, why is it they hated you? Why did Obama and Biden hate you so much? I may be using the wrong word, but why is it they?
I mean, I think that
see you as a threat.
Well, I always wonder how I even got promoted, because Obama chose me twice. He appointed me twice to Assistant Director of National Intelligence, and also for the Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He appointed me twice, and that means that I was Senate confirmed twice. And I don't know this for a fact, but I think it was a unanimous consent by the Senate. So it's interesting how I ever even got into this position. But I never served in Washington, D.C., except until I made 2-star, and I served over in the Pentagon as the senior intelligence officer for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. So I was not a Washington guy from the military perspective. But what they learned about me, and why I was probably effective as a soldier and as a leader, was because I was very honest about what we needed to do or not needed to do to all the bosses that I had, to everybody that I worked for. I was never somebody that was going to go in and kiss somebody's rear end, to get a promotion. It was always about, here's what Mike Flynn believes based on my experience, my judgment, my analysis. And I think that gained a lot of respect for me. So I'll stop speaking of myself here. But why did they?
I just want to continue. Michael Flynn, General Flynn, is a hero whose work in intelligence and making sure it was better and more effective has probably saved more lives than any other. I don't want to exaggerate too much.
Yeah.
But it's fair to say that you saved lives by making intelligence better and more easily usable by our fighting men and women on the field.
Yeah, by our warriors. That's right. That was my whole purpose in life. I never wanted anybody to forget that at the end of what we had was some man or woman who was willing to sacrifice their lives to do something that they don't even totally understand, frankly, for people that didn't care about them. Yeah. So, but they're willing to do it. And when you have that kind of responsibility on your shoulders, I was gonna do anything that I could to make the system work. And so, that sort of Mike Flynn's shtick, if you will. But to get back to, I think what we're describing is why. So they knew that I knew how the system works. Okay, I know how government operates. I know not only the Defense Department, the State Department, but the intelligence community, which are really the three big tiers, if you will. I know these organizations. I know the agencies and activities. I know the functionalities that they have within and the interrelationships that they have. And I know the parts of them that are totally broken and abusive, frankly, to our own system or to our republic, and willingly will take money from the American public and spend it in ways that the American public would be absolutely outraged by. So I know all those things, and I still know those things. And I do believe in reform. Anybody that's known me from the time I was a young officer and going into organizations, I was actually put into organizations from the time I was probably a major, because I was known for, new ideas and reforming and change. And so in different aspects of my career, that was kind of what I did. When I look back, at the Defense Intelligence Agency, one of the major reforms that we put in there, that is still operational and it's still effective. So the system, the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., they knew that there was going to be reforms coming, and it was going to be led by Mike Flynn. And the first set of reforms was the National Security Council, which is just this bloated government inside of a government. And then the other reforms are then the intelligence community that's under the executive branch of the government. And then the Department of Defense. And then the Department of Defense, it's not our military, so to speak, our uniform wearing people, as much as it is the bloatedness within the E-ring of the Pentagon. And also there's an intelligence system inside of the Department of Defense that most people don't understand.
I remember talking to a general you probably know, and we were talking about cost savings in the Defense Department. I was worried about the budgets. He goes, you know what you should do? You should go over to the Pentagon at 3:30, and who's ever not at their desk, just fire them, because usually those are the people who should be there to begin with. But I want to get back to the DIA on this, because I think you were running at the DIA at the time this document was generated, and I think it was the most important document uncovered by Judicial Watch, and I think you know the report I'm talking about.
Yep.
It's a DIA report that warned of the rise of ISIS and the caliphate, highlighted that Western countries were literally supporting al-Qaeda operations against Syria. And secondly, it placed Libya as the way station for terror and arms, terrorists to feed into the war there, and arms to feed into the war there. And it was a straightforward analysis. It showed that we knew what was going on, that Libya was a hot spot for terrorism as a result of the destruction of the Gaddafi regime and murder of Gaddafi by the Obama administration. And it all centered on Benghazi. So, if as a viewer, you're wondering why it is Barack Obama and Joe Biden would be nervous about Mike Flynn having the keys to the kingdom as national security advisor, take a look at that document and
read that report, post it with this interview, because you're right.
We'll go back and repost it. And I don't say this lightly. I've been doing this for 22 years plus. I think it's the most important document we found. It talks about how a war began, and it ties it to the murder of 4 innocent Americans that was covered up to cover up how this war began. I mean, this is the sort of scenario that the left had fantasies about, with Cheney and Iraq and all of that. And, every movie you see has this fantasy that they did this, there's people were killed. It was all, and they didn't want the truth to come out because of a war and a war effort. Oh my gosh, that's what happened under Obama. We've got the document that shows it.
Well, I would also add to that document for your viewers and for those that read that document, that document, I know exactly what you're talking about. That is what I call hard fought for intelligence. And it's not just somebody's belief or somebody's theory. This is based on observation. It's based on collection, direct collection. It's based on experience and judgment. It's based on years and years of fighting this enemy and knowing specifically through direct observation what was happening and what was known. And I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that, because it is a really, really, but that, Tom, along with, because I'll jump to the other side of the region, what was known about Iran, because Iran is another component to why Mike Flynn. And I think that there is a shift because of a belief to a completely new foreign policy that was that should be and is actually unacceptable to the American public. That's not what the American public wanted. And in fact, Donald Trump is a consequence of this shift in direction by the United States of America to something that is totally unrecognizable to us as a constitutional republic and a freedom-loving democracy.
Well, and the Iran issue goes back to Bush even before Obama, too.
Right.
So I want to talk. I wanted to talk about the election, but before we get there, let's bring it forward to the alleged ongoing investigation by Durham and company. What's your thinking about what what I think about?
Yeah.
Scam, but maybe you can make me feel better about it, or maybe you share.
I don't know if I'll make you feel better about it, but here's one of my sort of 100,000 foot level. I'm tired of the Department of Justice pretending like we're going to hide behind investigations and not tell the American people anything. I mean, how about just coming out and saying we are in fact investigating election fraud? Or how about coming out and saying we have, Barr kind of danced around it back, I think in late August in an interview where he said, you're going to see some big news coming out this week. And that big news is nothing. It's turned out to be nothing. So I'm tired of the lack of transparency. I don't need to know the specifics about an investigation, but I would like to know that our Department of Justice is actually working for the American people.
Right.
That's number one.
If there's a grand jury, what's happening. They don't need to talk about it.
Right. Exactly. And just say, yes, we are. In fact, we have a grand jury in progress. Anybody that has actually testified to that grand jury, unless they're told directly not to say anything, they're more than free to get out there and talk. And some of them have. But I'm tired of and I think the American public have lost all confidence, not just some, all confidence in our Department of Justice, which includes the FBI, because of the way that they have treated the American public over the last few years, over the last 4 or 5 years now. And it's a horrible place for a constitutional republic to be, but that's where we are. That's the 100,000 foot level.
My view is, this has nothing to do with, I think this should be done whether or not he's going to get a second term.
Yeah.
I say three special counsels. Now I say 4.
Yeah.
Elections, Obamagate, Biden, and Hillary.
Yep.
Statute of limitations hasn't run in Hillary Clinton. We now have more information that she violated classified laws 6 ways to Sunday. The initial investigation was compromised. I don't need to tell you about the egregious. I mean, we talk about the Russians. We went and told Peter Strzok's people in I think June of 2016 that we had evidence the Russians compromised her server, and of course Strzok and company did nothing with it.
Right.
And we've been begging for a damage assessment from this administration, and I think the president has been ill-served by his appointees on virtually every major corruption issue. And I don't mean every issue. I mean corruption. Exposing and holding account the corruption that has been endemic in this town. His appointees have had little to no interest in pursuing. And I'm not seeing evidence to the contrary. Even with Durham as special counsel, we're going to get a report. And as you know, a report in a quarter will get you a cup of coffee, and it won't even get you a cup of coffee.
And so, in terms of the Durham investigation, I am, I guess, am I livid? Yeah, probably. Am I irritated? Absolutely. I just find that what we already know to be true and the lack of accountability, yet all of us, all these pardons that Trump just had to give, to include mine. I mean, it's outrageous. And so here the president of the United States is having to give out all these pardons, and especially mine. Mine's an interesting one because the judge was waiting for the outcome of a presidential election.
I mean, even the Justice Department agreed there were no charges pending against you.
Right. Exactly. So the fact that the president of the United States has to put himself be placed into that position is because of our inability to hold accountable senior officials in the United States government who are unaccounted for bureaucrats, and in some cases appointed under the previous administration, and yet they're all out there spewing hatred of America and still calling people treasonous, whatever, and making these crazy claims because they get away with it, and they've gotten away with it. Let me add one other thing, Tom, because I know we have we have a little limited time. The in your face right now of this group of people, and this group of people consists of both foreign and domestic people, as well as institutions, but certainly foreign countries. They do not care any longer that they're caught. Okay, and they are exposed in a big way. And if this election continues to go the way it's going, again, like I said, they don't care that they got caught. They just don't care any longer because nothing happens to them.
I mean, you saw that video of the Chinese Communist official laughingly boasting of the fact and getting the applause from the audience, how he had compromised Joe Biden, how the government had compromised Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And there's no accountability about it, at least to date. Well, let's go forward to the election controversy. I know you have been working closely with Sidney Powell and company to highlight these issues, and I know the media has made great hay of what you've allegedly said about your concerns to people, third hand, fourth hand, or no hand sources.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thinking on the election? I mean, I'll just give you my simple approach. They changed the rules in a way that's illegal, and they counted votes they weren't allowed to count. Therefore, the states, and that difference was the difference for Biden. And as a result, Trump should win. It's not a question of wanting Trump to win. It's just what the elections lawfully run show. But you've gotten a little bit deeper beyond that, and you're a little bit out there further on the computer issues, and more specifically, and I think our audience would be interested in this, and it goes to your previous comments about the foreign connections and interference potentially in our election processes, and and what should be done about it.
Yeah. So, number one, our beautiful Constitution has a process that we are following, and I think that has to be followed. Like in warfare, the best plan gives you the most options up to the last possible minute on the battlefield if you want to be successful. And great leaders, great commanders, they may not always convey all their options, but they know what they are, and they understand up to the last second that they know, as time goes on, I might be giving up certain options because I'm going down to the last second here. And I think that's where the president is at. I believe the president is exhausting the constitutional process, and rightly so. So on this Dominion, ES&S, which is the other system, electronic voting systems, and another company called HART, and they use this version of a Smartmatic. Dominion uses this software, Smartmatic. So all that said, our electronic voting systems, by law, are not supposed to be connected to the internet. So they're not supposed to be connected to the internet. You're not supposed to do software updates prior to an election, during the election, or after the election, unless it's recertified, meaning the entire thing has to be shut down, recertified. And in fact, if I have my dates, my numbers correct, or my days correct, it's 90 days prior. If you're going to make a software change, you have to do it 90 days prior to an election.
So no patches in the middle of the night.
No patches in the middle of the night, no patches the day before, no patches after. Okay. Right. So, and then the other thing about the internet, it's not supposed to be connected to the internet. So we have factual evidence that through forensic analysis of these electronic machines having IP addresses, right? An IP address is an internet protocol. It's essentially an electronic handshake between me and Tom Fenton. And that electronic handshake is between one machine to another machine. In some cases, that other machine is a server, right? Is a server that everybody now is familiar with. So we have internet protocol addresses that go to China, that go to Serbia, that go to Spain, that go to Germany, that go to Russia, that go to Iran. I mean, these are clear. This is clear evidence. So put that aside, because really what you highlighted was unconstitutional actions by states, and in some cases by counties, in certain counties, Maricopa County in Arizona, Wayne County in Michigan, Fulton County in Georgia. So you have unconstitutional actions taken that are outside of the Constitution, that, especially for our election process, that were taken. And now everybody's going, well, there's no evidence here. You know, the media is going, there's nothing to see here. There's no fraud. Hell, the president of the United States is being censored, for Christ's sakes. So
Right.
There's only one judge that I am familiar with, as it stands right now, that has actually reviewed the evidence in any real detailed way. And that judge is a judge up in Michigan, who was this Antrim County judge, who actually had a great suit put in front of him by a plaintiff who felt disenfranchised because of his vote on marijuana, if you can believe it. And lo and behold, through that, we discover that Antrim County had some abnormalities and actually outside the Constitution actions on this Dominion system. So from that, and from a couple of other points of collection, we have learned what I just described to you about this foreign interference. And foreign interference is really, it doesn't mean that they change the outcome. It just, all you have to do is identify that there was interference, which we have clearly identified interference. So,
yeah, I mean, the memory hole approach to this, look, witnesses about what happened in Venezuela aside, we've had report after report until it became inconvenient to remember those reports, that Chavez stole the election using an electronic computer system. Smartmatic has admitted they left the country because of the abuse of their system. So it's not unfair to ask, it seems to me, we're not even allowed to ask the question, well, can the systems that Smartmatic used that are, and they don't have to be one-to-one systems, but they're all basically the same approach. I mean, they all have their own little patent related to the programming, but it's all, you can only count votes so many ways. Are those systems susceptible to manipulation the way they were in Venezuela? And we're not even allowed to ask the question.
Right. Tom, Judicial Watch is a master of lifting up the rug and finding the dirt. Okay. But we don't have time for that right now.
Well, that's true.
We really don't. We don't have time for it. But yeah, the question is, what is it?
Documents. They're not giving us documents.
The question is, what are they hiding? And why? Why are they hiding it? Why not? If there's nothing to see here, then just open up the kimono and let's take a look at it. Let's find out if we truly had foreign interference in our election. I can tell you, it's not whether we had it. We have foreign interference in our election. There is no doubt. I am 100% certain of that. We have domestic interference in our election through a whole series of things, from the video from Georgia down in Fulton County, where they pulled the suitcases out from underneath the table while everybody was gone, and they started flipping votes at that point in time, to a bunch of other examples of abuse and fraudulent activity across the country in various, and a lot of these hearings that Rudy Giuliani and his team held. I mean, you can't deny where you have, I think we're upwards of 50,000. I think it's even more than that now. I use 50,000. That's probably 2 weeks old, of American citizens who have come forward under penalty of perjury and signed affidavits to say, I saw this, I witnessed that. And these are powerful testimony to a fraudulent election. And so for the media and for those that the Democratic Party who are saying, nothing to see here, let's just keep moving, I'm going to appoint somebody else to be secretary of this or secretary of that, and shut up and go home, take your ball and go home. Now let me just,
my perception is Biden knows he doesn't have a legitimate claim on the presidency, and I think his appointments, his attitude, his behavior suggests someone who knows they've been caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And it's not to say that Biden stole it personally. The left and its allies broke the rules to get him in power. That was what happened. And I think on the election, my view on the election security stuff is what we're going to find is what you said, that they broke the rules. So they broke the rules in a way that compromised the results. Didn't mean that the results were compromised. It made it impossible to reassure any normal person that they were legit. So when you break the rules, when you have computer systems that can be breached and are breached, and when you are changing the systems in the middle of the elections, you're breaking the law and you're undermining the administration of the elections and therefore negating them, the results. That's what they're worried about. They don't, even if it's just bureaucratic bungling, they didn't want to, they were going to do their patches and they didn't think about the implications of it. They recognize that it bursts the narrative that the election was administered fairly.
Yeah. So I would just say it like this. And I think the American culture is still this way. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. And I don't believe for 1 second that the American public has been fooled and the wool pulled over their eyes. The American public is seeing and responding in a way that their expectations are that this will be resolved and light will be shined brightly on the truth. Because at the end of the day, it's like my case. I'm a perfect example of it. The truth finally came out. You had to fight for it, but the truth finally came out. And so they dragged a human being, an American citizen, through something that should have never have happened. But what it did was it exposed an ugliness in our system and in our institutions. And frankly, I don't know, but by the grace of God, that the American people, they didn't run from me. They came to my aid, because without them, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I'd be sitting probably in some jail cell right now. And honestly, think about that. So the American public, they are no longer going to be the fool here. And so there has to be a resolution. And in fact, for Vice President Biden, you would think that, if he believed in our country the way I think that, as somebody that served in government, somebody that served, and I'm talking about myself now, not necessarily him, but those of us that serve in the government for a greater good, you would think that they would want to have, an outcome that was respected and fair. So maybe there'll be a phone call between these two people, Trump and Biden, one of these days here soon. I doubt it. I'm living in a nut world if I believe that, but maybe that'll happen. Maybe we'll get lucky and they'll go, you know what? Maybe we ought to relook everything, and we ought to, because I don't want to take office with this kind of dark cloud over me. So again, I just, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. And the American public will not be fooled again.
Yeah, I'm not angry at the prospect. I'm sad and concerned at the prospect, and I'm concerned about our country, that we're going to have a president potentially installed who wasn't rightfully elected. And that's something that I don't like to see. I'm just concerned about the governance of the country, our foreign policy, and besides the corruption of his personal corruption has compromised his administration. It's an unholy mess. And, let's pray. I mean, Senator Josh Hawley announced that he will object in the Senate to some of these electors from these compromised battleground state elections. So we'll see how that works. I suspect they're nervous. They don't want the process to take place because they don't know how the process will turn out. So maybe there's hope for justice here. We'll see.
Yeah.
What's next?
I think, Tom, let me just offer that there's a weakness in the political class in our system. And I don't mean that in 100%, but there is a weakness because there is access to power there's access to wealth that is unholy. And so as and I'll use Swalwell again. It's this compromise that people have probably been placed under, and people are weak. They're generally weak. The moral fiber of certain people that get around this power and wealth is very attractive, and they fall prey to it. So Swalwell we're scratching the surface, and like you do so well. And frankly, I am not a political person. I would really love to see the truth come out. I love to see it all solved, but our institutions and people in our institutions are compromised, and they're compromised by an adversary that is very real. And so, how deep is that run, and how far have they taken it? I think we're experiencing that right now.
I mean, what I love about you, General, is that, you got your pardon, and you could have done what everyone else in Washington would do, or other retired generals do, you stay at home, enjoying your family back in Rhode Island. And instead you stepped into the breach again. And it's from what I hear, it sounds to me like you're not leaving.
Well, I can't spend my entire life doing what I've done and believing the way I believe, without, and having children and grandchildren, Tom, and then going off, into the sunset and I mean, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm naive, or maybe I'm whatever, but I know what I believe, and I know how I believe, and I know how firmly I believe in it. And I think that our nation our democracy is an experiment. It always has been. And nation states rise and fall. And so we have to recognize that we are potentially in a place where we have a moment in time where maybe we are at the cliff, and we're about to step off. I don't know. I hope that I'm wrong. And I hope that the president of the United States, in this case, Donald Trump, recognizes all of his options, because his legacy will be destroyed, ripped apart, put underneath the rug, no matter what good he did. And I think that's just the moment where we are, and I feel that in my heart.
Well, General, we appreciate the generous time you spent with us today. And I know I speak on behalf of all of our viewers and Judicial Watch supporters, which number in the millions, that we have been praying for you, and we are ecstatic that you are now a free man, and are able to exercise your full constitutional rights. And I will just say, these precious rights,
right,
that nowhere else can we talk about an election the way we're talking about. We don't have civic societies in other countries like we have here that are protected by a constitution that recognizes our God-given rights. So this discussion itself is a miracle. And we really appreciate your activism and patriotism. And we, I guess I'm being selfish as a patriot. We hope you never leave the battlefield. We hope you never leave the battlefield. But you're giving so much of yourself as it is. I guess I can't complain if you do.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I would say, and I'll go back to what I said about you and Judicial Watch, for your listeners, your viewers, and the millions that do support you. I mean, if there's an organization that you get your money's worth, it's Judicial Watch. And I say that not because whatever, I could say it. I don't have to say it, I guess, is what I'm saying. And I say it because without Judicial Watch, God help this country.
Yeah. Well, General, thank you very much for those kind words again. My best to you and your family from my family. And like I said, all our supporters, and have a wonderful, enjoy the rest of the Christmas season, and have a wonderful New Year.
Great. Happy New Year to you and your whole team, Tom, and your family. And I look forward to seeing you next year sometime. Okay.
Same here. Thank you.
God bless.